This is Chemistry Unit 4. We are talking about the periodic table in this unit. So the periodic table, it organizes information. It organizes information about all of the known elements. The modern periodic table contains a lot of information. During this unit, you might want to have one out, like the blue one that I gave you in class. It's got a lot of information. It would be helpful to be looking at a periodic table as we go through this. Early versions were not much more than just a list of substances that we knew about. For instance, Antoine Lavoisier, he created a list of what he called simple substances, and it included elements like oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, mercury. It also included light and something called caloric, both of which we now know are not chemicals. So as we start to discover more elements, scientists are looking for patterns. John Newlands is the first that we say recognized a pattern, and he called it the Law of Octaves. He recognized that elements tend to have repeating properties every 8 elements. The major breakthrough came from a Russian chemist named Dmitry Mendeleev. He created a list of every known element, and he arranged them by increasing atomic mass. Atomic mass is the average number of protons and neutrons. And we're talking about a large quantity of atoms of the same element. So if we had a very large sample of carbon atoms, the atomic mass is the average number of protons and neutrons. Mendeleev arranged his list as a table. In doing this, he was able to show the repeating patterns that he saw in the elements, things that we now call trends. He notices that things like fluorine, chlorine, and bromine, and iodine all have very similar properties, and so he wanted to arrange them in a way that would show the trends. Mendeleev's table of elements was even able to predict the existence and the properties of elements that had yet to be discovered. His predictions were so accurate that he wrote to one of the discoverers of these elements, told him to recheck his data. Recheck your data. Mendeleev's predictions, as it turned out, were more accurate than this chemist's measurements. Mendeleev predicted 3 new elements that had not been discovered. The first one, the one in which this situation occurred, was gallium. There were 2 others. Those were also found within 15 years. So within 15 years, he had predicted the existence of 3 elements that were discovered, and he had predicted the properties. He had predicted the properties accurately before they were existed. His table was working out very well. It had great accuracy. They found the 3 elements that he was looking for, but it still had some inconsistencies that Mendeleev could not explain. There were a few elements that did not follow the trends. This problem was later solved by Henry Moseley, or sometimes you'll see his name as Harry Moseley. Moseley arranged the elements by atomic number. Atomic number is the number of protons. Arranging the elements by atomic number eliminated the inconsistencies. And it even predicted the existence of more undiscovered elements. When the periodic table is arranged by increasing atomic number, we see something emerge. We call it the periodic law. The periodic law states that when elements are arranged by increasing atomic number, the properties repeat periodically, or at regularly occurring intervals. Before I move on, I'm going to give you some dates here, and the dates really aren't going to show up on So before we move on, I'm going to give you some dates here just to show you the timeline, the basics of when all of this happened. So Mendeleev, we're talking about 1860s. 1860s, middle of the decade, he is working on trying to crack the code. He is working on this periodic table. Interestingly enough, protons, nobody knew they existed. Neutrons, didn't know they existed. Electrons, we didn't know they existed. So he is doing all of this without any knowledge that protons and neutrons even exist. So protons, we have the discoverer is Rutherford, and this happens, he discovers in 1917. Neutrons, James Chadwick, discovered in 1932. Moseley, who arranged the elements by atomic number, which we now know is the number of protons, is doing his work in 1913. Now look at this. He is arranging the elements by atomic number in 1913 when protons aren't even discovered until 1917. Well, his experiment was looking, and he was seeing this strange pattern that turned out to be the atomic number. He didn't know it was protons, but he knew the atomic number was some sort of a pattern because of the data he was measuring. Interestingly enough, he never lived to see protons discovered. He was an officer in World War I. He was sent to Turkey and lived to see 27 years old. So we had Mendeleev in the 1860s arranging by atomic mass. It was good, but it wasn't perfect. Then we have Henry Moseley arranging by atomic number. This one works, periodic law. And then shortly after his work, we find that the protons are the atomic number. progression of discoveries.